It's December 27, 2021. I'm Todd Dunn, and today I'm going to do a brief video about a Christmas present that I bought for my 1972 Allied Princess 36 sailboat. So let's take a look at it. This is a Raymarine Element 7S multifunction display, better known as a Chartplotter. This has a built-in GPS, and it can be connected to a radar via Wi-Fi only, no cable. In addition to the Chartplotter itself, this instrument came with a bronze depth sounder transducer. And this is one of the reasons I bought this particular one. These transducers like this are very expensive. This one costs retail about $250, and I paid a total of $550 for the multifunction display plus this depth sounder transducer. So in essence, what that means is that I paid about $300 for the multifunction display itself. Now, the multifunction display also came with a chart card. This is Raymarine's Lighthouse North America charts, and these are quite nice charts. They come on a micro SD card, which is inside the standard SD card right here. Also came with, as usual, a manual, and it came with a large sheet of installation and initial setup instructions. So let's take a little bit closer look at the plotter itself. Well, here's the plotter itself in its mounting bracket. It also came with a gasket if you want to panel mount it, and there are little rubber fittings up here in the corner so that you can remove to have access to screw holes to panel mount it. And we're getting reflections off the screen on various things in the room, but basically, the front has a set of push-button controls. This one is not touchscreen. This is a little rubber panel here where the on-off switch is located. If we pull that out, and it's a little tricky to get a hold of. Behind there we have the slot to plug in the chart card. It just plugs in right here where my thumb is. And here's the on-off switch, and there's just a little button on the back of this piece of rubber that will actuate that on-off switch, and this provides a watertight seal. And there are a number of other controls here. I'll go through what they are, and these are basically how you enter data into the system and set it up and control it. This is a button for dropping a waypoint. This is the home button that takes you back to what's called the home screen. You'll see what that is in a little bit. This is the menu button. This toggle switch here is for moving about on the screen, either moving the cursor if you have it in chart mode or radar mode, or moving from option to option. You have a back button here, OK, which is effectively an enter button, plus and minus for zooming out and in respectively. And these three buttons are user-defined buttons, so you can define them to go to a particular menu location in the system. For example, I could define number 1 as going to radar, number 2 as going to chart, and number 3 as going to split screen radar and chart. And then there is the on-off switch. Now let's turn this guy around and look at the back. Okay, here's the back of it. It's pretty straightforward. You got a heat sink of some sort up here. This is where the power cable and NMEA 2000 connects, and this is a dedicated connection for the depth sounder transducer. The power cable has a dedicated setup, and again, this is both power and NMEA 2000 data. And this just goes in like this, and you tighten the locking ring, and that has an O-ring in it to make it watertight. And this little cable here is for connecting to the NMEA 2000 network. So that's basically all there is on the outside of it. Only two connections, one for the depth sounder transducer and one for power and NMEA 2000. At this point, I'm going to power the Raymarine Element 7S up so that we can take a look at what it looks like and some of the options. Now to power it up, you just push the power button and hold it until it beeps. There we go. Now, except for the first startup, I've found it takes about 1 minute and 15 seconds to get to the home screen. So what I'm going to do is just tell you a little bit about the very first power up. Okay, the very first time you power this up, it is going to put you in a menu and ask you a bunch of questions about your boat. It's going to want to know the length, the beam, how many engines you have, various things like that. None of those questions really matter because later on, as we'll see, you can edit your answers. So it doesn't really matter what you put in, you can edit them later. There is, however, one question that you have one opportunity to answer, and that is, do you have radar? Now, if you are ever planning to put radar on the system, or even if you think that 3 years from now you might put radar on the system, you want to answer yes to this question. And the reason is very simple. This is the only time, the first power-up, that you get to answer yes or no to that question without doing a complete factory reset. Now, as we'll find out, this system is very customizable in terms of what it looks like, and if you do a complete factory reset, you're going to lose all of that customization and have to do it again. So if you think that there's any chance you might be adding radar to the system, say yes during that initial power up when you get to radar. Anyway, while I was talking about that, we have gotten to the home screen. That's what this is called in the manual. And the first thing it does when you get to the home screen is ask you this little question, or basically it's a statement about your understanding that this is not your primary navigation system, although we know in the real world it will be. So you have to press OK, because OK is highlighted here. You press OK and it lets you move on. Now when you get to the home screen, this is where you can select what you're going to see on the screen. You have 3 full screen options: chart, fish finder if you have the depth sounder transducer plugged in, and radar if you've answered yes to the radar question and have a radar plugged into the system. You also have 3 split screen modes, and they are chart, dashboard. Dashboard is where you show your NMEA 2000 data from whatever. Chart and fish finder, and chart and radar. One thing I've noticed about this system though is that it cannot do is overlay radar data on the chart, which is something I wish it could do. It's a fault of the system in my opinion, and maybe in a future update of the software they will change that, but who knows. Also from this screen you can go down here, just go down. You'll notice there's a blue outline around what you have selected. Go down, you can look at the waypoints you have set. You can look at any routes that you have set up. You can create new routes, etc. And you can look at any tracks that you've recorded. And you can go into settings. And this is where we're going to make a lot of changes to the system as a whole. In settings, you have just some sort of getting started information where you tell it a little bit about how you intend to use it. We can move over to boat details, And this is where you can edit those various questions that you were asked about the boat. So if you didn't tell it your minimum safe depths, you can go in here and edit it. And you do that simply by going down to whatever you want to edit, say minimum safe depth, pressing OK, and it opens up a window where you can go up and down in minimum safe depth right here. Okay, and basically you can go through all of the questions it asks you at the beginning. Units is where you set the units you want things displayed in. Do you want your depths in feet or meters? Do you want your distances in nautical miles, statute miles, or kilometers, etc.? So that's very useful, and these are all, again, all whole system parameters. This display is where you can set up various parameters about the display. And if you keep going down here, one option right there is pair with quantum. This is one of the places where you can pair the Raymarine Element 7S with a Raymarine quantum radar. Now this system uses Wi-Fi to communicate with the radar, so that there is no radar cable. There's no place to connect a radar cable to the system. So don't waste your money and buy a radar that has both Wi-Fi connection capability and a radar cable, because you won't be able to use the radar cable. And if you didn't take my advice and you did not tell it you were going to have radar when you initially started the system up, this is where 2 years later, when you decide you do want radar, you can factory reset the system. And as I said, that's going to erase all of the personalization and customization that you have entered. And you'll have to do it all again. So let's continue back up. And here is where you can set alarms for the system for various things. Minimum safe depth, for example. So if you get into a spot that's shallower than your minimum safe depth, it'll sound an alarm. And import-export is just where you can set up information to import and export data to the micro SD card behind the rubber panel here, and where you can eject the micro SD card. And finally, Wi-Fi. This is where you configure the system for Wi-Fi. Because it's has Wi-Fi capability, you can set it up to communicate with your home Wi-Fi system, the Wi-Fi system at the marina, etc. The only clunky aspect of setting up Wi-Fi is it isn't a touch screen. It will display a keyboard, and you navigate around the keyboard with the arrow keys. Select each letter, press OK, and what's particularly clunky is if you want to put in a capital letter for your password. Almost all passwords have capital letters in them now. You're going to have to select the Shift key, press OK, then select the letter you want and press OK again. And that, if you have a lot of capital letters in a password, that can get a little bit annoying. And that's the last option in settings. So we're going to use the back button to get back to the home screen. So here we are. At this point, if we wanted to, we could select a particular screen. So we're going to do that. We're going to have a look at the chart screen and see a little bit about how you can customize that screen. Okay, so let's select the chart display, and we'll press OK, and it should load the chart. And this takes a few seconds. This uses what's called the Raymarine Lighthouse operating system. And here's a chart. Now I've got it set up with range rings and a few other things. And here is the chart for where I am on Mount Desert Island, Maine. Let's zoom out a little bit so that we can see the area. a little better. Okay. And we can move around on a chart with the arrow keys. This is Southwest Harbor, where I keep my boats. And we can just press. Okay, let's press back and back. Will take us back to being centered on the location. If you're not moving, your location is shown by a black dot. If you are moving, it's shown by a boat icon. Now, the boat icon can be customized, as can everything else in the chart display, which is quite useful. Just go through and show you some of it. We can go down to settings. The cog wheel is for settings, so we just go down there, press OK, and we get into our chart settings. Here is the cartography. I have the Lighthouse North America chart card in there. The charts are simply loaded on micro SD cards, and this one has a 16 gigabyte micro SD card in there, and there's room to put a completely different chart system such as Navionics on there. And if you had that on there, you'd have two options and you could select the one you wanted to use. Then we get into layers. Here you can select the level of chart detail. High is what the default is, and that is what I would recommend for normal use of the system. Unless you have a go fast boat. If you have a fast boat, you might want to select medium or even low, because that will make it less processor intensive to redraw the chart as the boat moves, and will allow you to keep up with your boat more appropriately. But low probably isn't really necessary unless you have a boat that runs at, say, 40 knots. For a sailboat or a displacement cruiser, high is going to be where you want to set it. And you can select that. You can select chart object size, control how big things are on the chart. Your color palette, chart style. There are two options with this particular chart package. One is the standard vector chart, which we see here, and the other one is what's called government chart, which looks a lot like a paper chart. And then you've got a number of other things that you can change on there. And basically, with this system, pretty much everything you see on the screen is customizable. So let's go back up. To layers and view and motion. Here's where you can change relative chart motion. Does the chart move, keeping your vessel at the center, etc. You can change chart orientation. I have head up selected, which is going to be your course that the boat is following selected. You can also select north up, or you can select the course that you've set in a route or to be up. You can adjust the boat position down here. You can adjust what kind of boat you have, and this will control what the boat icon looks like. And so those are some things. Over here on depths, you can control exactly what is displayed on the chart. What depth indications are going to show up. Let me zoom in a little bit. Yeah, I can't do it while I'm in this menu, but if I was zoomed in, you'd see depth indicators on there, and you can control what the maximum level is. I've got it set to not show anything greater than 250 feet. You can have it show depth contours or not, and where the contours are. For example, you can set up what this darker color is. Right around here in close there is a very dark color, which is the 10-foot contour, and this is the 10 to 50 foot range, and this is deeper than 50 feet the way I have it set up. And that is completely customizable. Let's go down, for example, and say deep contour, press OK. We can change that, and that'll change how much is displayed in this lighter blue. And you can also change the colors that are represented there. Okay, so let's OK out of that. So you can really program what the display looks like and customize it a lot, and you probably will do that. And the other thing that's useful, let's go back here. I think this will take me back there. Press OK again, and I'm going to go over to the last option here, data boxes. Data boxes controls what shows up in the corners of the screen in terms of data. And you can basically set those to be pretty much anything you want. Data that's generated by the Element 7S itself, or data that comes in from the NMEA 2000 network. And so you can just, for example, let's go to supply voltage. This, I've got it set to show the voltage coming into the system from the battery. We go over here on number 2 here. You can program that to be what you want. Let's see what some of the options are. Edit. You can see here are some of the options that you have. Pretty much anything you want can be in that box. Now, I seem to have changed that inadvertently. I have to go back and redo it. I've got this one set up to show the trip for the current day, because we like to keep track of how far we've gone. And I have this one set up to show the time which it gets from the GPS. So the thing is, for each one of these screens, you can control everything that shows up on that screen very nicely. So let's go back to the chart. Remember, this has got a highlight around it, which you can change by moving it here, and press OK, and it's going to reload the chart. Let's zoom in a little. And you can see I've got some depths out here where it's less than 250 feet deep. Let's move over. Go up here. Now, the way I've got this set up, anything that is less than 10 feet deep will show up as the dark blue. 10 to 50 feet will show up as the light blue, and greater than 50 feet depth will show up as white. And I said that's all programmable. So this is what a typical chart looks like. Let's move over and go up here to Southwest Harbor, and okay, so let's go to the cursor. Well, what it's done is made a route to the cursor from my previous location. I'm not very practiced with this yet, but I will get it eventually. So we'll zoom in. You can hold the zoom in key if you want. And this is a vector chart, so you can see the amount of detail available increases as you zoom in. So here are our depths in feet and various features in the chart area. And this is the location of my mooring. So this is a very powerful chart plotter, lots of customization. You can make it look pretty much any way you want. And so far the only thing I wish it had was radar overlay on the chart display. And hopefully in the future they will update the software so that it can do that. But as far as I can tell now, it can't do that. So anyway, that's the Raymarine Element 7S. Pressing this pulls up this menu where you can define what the shortcut keys are. You can also go in and adjust the screen brightness. I have it turned down quite a ways right now because it was overwhelming the camera. And take a screenshot, eject the SD card, change the color theme, and do a sonar ping if you have the depth sounder transducer hooked up. And finally, if you want to shut down, there, let's press OK, and it turns off. So that is the Raymarine Element 7S. It's also available as a 9-inch or a 12-inch display, and so far I quite like it. I think it's going to be a nice replacement for my Lowrance HDS5 multifunction display, which is in its death throes right now. So this is a replacement for that, and hopefully it will work very nicely next season when I have it mounted on the boat. Okay, hopefully you found this informative. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. And if you haven't, maybe you might want to consider subscribing to my channel and maybe even click that notification bell. Thanks for watching.